Okay.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Paarth,
My name is Amrutha.
and today Amrutha and I are going to talk about microeconomics, and we're going to go over some practice questions that we found online along with an FRQ. So we're going to cover about 10 multiple choice questions and one FRQ. So we can go ahead and start. So I'm going to start with question number 2. Which of the following would not shift the demand curve for beef? So before we begin, you should know the demand shifters that exist whenever we're studying economics. So that includes taste and preferences, related goods, income, um, population, and expectations for future prices. So which would not shift the demand for beef? So using the information that I just said, 1 second, my laptop kind of froze. A widely publicized study says that beef increases one's cholesterol. So obviously this is going to decrease demand, right, for beef because that affects taste and preferences. So off the bat, we can immediately cross off A. A reduction in the price of cattle field. Okay, I'm going to come back to that because I'm not sure. An effective advertising campaign by pork producers. So, and then a change in the incomes of beef consumers. So after I eliminated A, I'm going to eliminate D because a change in the incomes does affect beef consumers, right? Because that was one of the shifters of demand. Sorry. And so then um, an effective advertising campaign by pork producers. So in order to solve this question, I assumed that pork was kind of a substitute for beef. And so if there was an effective advertising campaign that would shift demand towards pork. And so I would cross that out. And then I would be left with a reduction in the price of cattle field. Well, first of all, price of cattle field has nothing to do with beef. Price of cattle field, in fact, is an input good that you would use for supply. So let's say this was a supply question. A reduction in the price of cattle fuel would be a decrease in the price of input goods, which means that you can actually make more of the supply. Okay, and then we have a third tutor who's joining us today as well. Her name is Shriya. So welcome, Shriya. Okay, and then Amrutha, you can cover one of these questions.
Okay. I'll do I'll do question 5,
Okay.
and it's similar to the question you just did. So you have to know the factors that shift supply, and what we learned in class was tripe plus NG, and it was technology related goods, input prices, um, produ- producers, expectations, natural and man-made phenomenons, and government action. So, so they say an improvement in production technology will, and so we could automatically eliminate D because um, technology goes along with the changes in supply, not demand. So you could eliminate that question. Um, and then we could also eliminate A because they're asking, we know that technology changes supply. So we can eliminate any answer choice that doesn't deal with supply. So now we should know that if you're increasing, we always shift to the right, and then decreasing, we shift to the left. And because an improvement in technology leads to a shift for supply. So we know that the answer is C.
Yeah, and so make sure you remember that an increase in supply is this way. Yeah. And then Shreya, you can do the next question.
Number 4.
No. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, you can do number 8 and number 9. Okay, I think she kind of froze, so
Okay. So, number 8. Let's look at about diagram.
Shriya, maybe you could try turning off your camera.
Okay, so it looks like we lost Shriya, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do 8. So
we're supposed to look at what a price of $60 is. Wow.
Okay, so
Hello?
Shriya,
Shriya, you're glitching, so I'm gonna mute you temporarily. Okay, so refer to the above diagram. A price of $60 in this market. So let's first let's just look at what $60 ideally means. So if you graph at $60, that's a horrible line, but just in case you missed that, a line at $60 would indicate a price floor. A price floor is a minimum price that you set on a certain good or on a certain service that we have in an economy. And in this situation, we have a surplus because we have more quantity supplied than we have more quantity demanded. And in that situation, we have 200 supplied, but only 100 demanded. And so in that situation, the answer would be D. You have a surplus of 100 units. You have more supply than what people actually want. I'll go ahead and just do 9 as well, and then we can move on to the next question. So I'm gonna change it to a different color so that you guys can see the difference. So a price at $20 would be called a price ceiling. And so in this situation, there's a shortage because the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied. And so that means people actually want more of what you're given or what you have produced. So in this situation, the answer would be a shortage of 100 units, right? Because 200 minus 100 is simply 100. Okay, and we're back. So we're gonna continue with question number 17. We had a few technical issues before, so we're gonna go ahead and start. So Amrutha, do you wanna do number 17?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and graph it for you. So you. So, in which price range of the accompanying demand schedule is demand elastic? So typically demand is elastic at the top of the price range. So off of the bat, I would just start off with going with that. And so if you calculate, you can even calculate price elasticity of every single one just to ensure. But let's start with the first one, just because that's the first one we had. So just to serve as a quick reminder, demand elasticity, please don't mind my disgusting handwriting, but is the percent change in quantity demanded versus over the percent change in the price. And so if you look at using that equation, let's look at the first one. So we have so we're going from $4 to $3 for A, and so it goes from 2 to 4. So to find percent change, it's difference over original, right? So 2 over 4 on the top, right? And then that divided by 1 over 4 on the bottom, right? Because our price changed by 1 and our initial price is 4. So if you calculate that and you can set it up as a multiplication, or if you simply are able to do it in your head, that's fine too. But 2 over 4 times 4 over 1, right? Because when we divide, we switch it. And so that's 8 over 2. And so 8 over 2 is 4. And so that means that it is elastic. So you already got your answer. But just to verify, to serve as a reminder again, whenever you're looking at price elasticity, there are a few simple rules that you should follow. And I'm going to type them out here on the screen just so that you remember. So when the price elasticity, when the coefficient of the price elasticity is less than 1, that's relatively inelastic. Can you guys see that on the screen? And then when the coefficient of the price elasticity is more than 1, it's relatively elastic. And so in this situation, then we know our answer, right? Because if it's relatively elastic and it's greater than 1, then we already got our answer. So using that information, Amrutha, you can go ahead and do number 18 if you want. One second, let me scroll down. Yeah, and I'll clear the screen.
Okay. So question 18 is asking when the percent change in price is greater than the resulting percentage change in quantity demanded. So just right away when they give this scenario, you should remember that if the percent change for quantity demanded is large compared to the percent change for price, that means it's highly elastic. But if the percent change for quantity demanded is small compared with the percent change for price, that means it is highly inelastic. And because here they said that the percent change for price is greater than the resulting percent change in quantity, we know that this situation is inelastic. So we could just eliminate B and D because we already know that it's inelastic, so it's obviously not elastic. And then you should remember the total revenue test, and this will help you answer the question. So for inelastic, you should remember that when the price, or is it when inelastic or something, when it like increases as well and then the total revenue also increases? Is that?
Yeah, so when demand is elastic and when the price increases, the total revenue increases.
Yeah.
So think about it this way. So that means that in reality, your price doesn't really have an impact on the quantity demanded. So let's say there were vaccines, right? And let's say you had to pay $2 for COVID vaccines initially. This is not a true statement. And now you have to pay $3 for COVID vaccines. COVID is a very dangerous pandemic. And so it's not really going to affect people's decision, especially to those who are capable of paying, right? And so in the situation when the price increases, the total revenue increases, right? There's no like really obeying of the law of demand because people are going to buy it because it's a necessity, right? Whereas when demand is when demand is inelastic, right?
Yeah.
I messed that up. But yeah, COVID vaccine would be inelastic. And then when demand is elastic, think of it the opposite way. Okay, so yeah, next question. Let's see. I'm trying to do some of the more mathy ones because they're more difficult. So let's see number 27 because that one was kind of difficult. So assume a drought in the Great Plains reduces the supply of wheat. Noting that wheat is a basic ingredient in the production of bread and that potatoes are a consumer substitute for bread, we would expect the price of wheat to. So this is a very multifaceted question. It's essentially asking you for 3 different things. So if it reduces the supply of wheat and wheat is used to make bread, we can, as Amrutha stated before, try plus ng. So that's an input good, right? So wheat is an input good for bread. So wheat is an input good for bread. And so if you know that information, the less input good you have, meaning the less amount of things you can make, means the less amount of things you can make, right? So that means the less wheat you have, the less bread you can produce. And so judging off of that, we can immediately decide that A and D are wrong, right? Because supply would have to decrease for bread. And then let's look at the second part, the first part of the question. So whenever supply reduces for wheat, what would happen to the price? So let's graph this. 1 second. So if I have, so this is not for question 28, but it's for question 27. So if I have supply and my supply decreases, my price is gonna rise, right? Because if you look at the vertical change, the price rises. And so the answer would either be B or C then, right? Because we already crossed off A or D. And both B and C say that the price of wheat rises. So then comes in the third part of the question, the question of demand. So if bread and potatoes are substitutes and the supply of bread decreases, that means that there's less bread for consumers to buy, right? And so if there's less bread for consumers to buy, that automatically would increase demand for potatoes, right? Because also think about it this way. If the price of wheat rises, right, then the supply of bread decreases, then I have less bread. So my quantity demanded would be less than, and then for potatoes, because potatoes measures demand. So that's one of your shifters when dealing with related goods. So the answer is B. Okay. And then Shriya, do you want to do any questions? Are you still there?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do 29.
Okay, yeah, you can go
Or,
ahead and
yeah.
29.
Okay, so it's asking us to figure out which of the following statements matches to the fact if a market is in equilibrium. So basically equilibrium just means that the quantity supplied meets the quantity demanded, and that might not be actually found in real life, but A says that equilibrium means that there's no surplus of the product. B says that at all prices that are shown by the intersection of supply and demand curves. C, if the producer's amount wants to sell is equal to the amount consumers want to buy, and D, whenever the demand curve is downsloping and supply curve is upsloping. So equilibrium is at this point where the quantity suppliers want to supply is 200 in this case, and the demand for that is $1. So the answer that best goes with this idea is C. Okay, yeah, I think.
Okay, let me clear the annotations. Okay, so sorry. Amrutha, do you have a specific question that you want to go over?
I'm still looking, but
Okay. We can do some of the last few questions because those are a little harder.
yeah.
So this is about price floors and price ceilings. So for number 35, if a government set a minimum price of $50 in the above market, what would happen? So before, make sure that you know a minimum price would be a price floor, right? And so when there's a price floor, there would be a surplus, right? So even without that information, you could solve this question. So at $50, let's highlight what, or at least underline in this case. So we can supply 73, but we demand for 52. So it's like we have so much supply. We have 21 supply left over, right? We can supply 21 more of the good because people only want 52 of it. So in that situation, the answer would simply be C, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then another question. Let's just do these last two because they're more simple and theoretical ones, and we should go over some of those. So Amrutha, you can do those.
Okay, so this question is asking about the law of supply, and we learned this at the beginning of this unit, but it's really just important to know because it helps a lot, like in the other questions. But so they say the law of supply, and for the law of supply, it's important to know that the price of a good or service is directly related to the quantity supplied. But like for law of demand, the price of a good and service is inversely related to the quantity demanded. And so the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied, the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. So knowing that, so A says reflects the amount that producers will want to offer at each price in a series of prices. And I'm just going to put a question mark for that for now because that does sound correct because we said that the lower the price, the lower producers want to supply, and the higher the price, the more producers want to supply. And then for B is reflected in a down sloping curve. That is incorrect because supply is always represented in a up sloping curve. So we automatically know that is wrong. And then C shows that the relationship between producer revenue and quantity supplied is negative. That's not right because we say how they're directly related. And then for D, reflects the income and substitution effect of a price change. And that's wrong because that goes with the law of demand. So we know that A is the right answer.
Okay, and then for the very last multiple choice question, an increase in the quantity demanded means. So this question is a little tricky because you can get caught up between the shifter of demand and just quantity demanded. So quantity demanded. So first let's draw our demand graph or line. So let's say we're at this point, right? And we're increasing the quantity demanded, which means that we go along this curve because we're increasing the quantity. So what does that really tell us? We can't say it shifted to the right or to the left because it really didn't. Given supply, the price of the product can be expected to decline. We're not even given any supply. So why is that even an answer choice? And then prices decline and consumers therefore want to purchase more of the product. So let's look at the second part of it. Quantity demanded increased. That automatically means yes, but make sure you realize that there's a second part of the question as well. Prices decline. And so based on the law of demand, we know that as quantity demanded increases, the price decreases. So you can go with B. So those were some of the multiple choice questions that you can expect to see in future microeconomics AP exams and also future microeconomics tests that we have in school. I hope that this session was helpful. We're gonna quickly do an FRQ and then that will be the end of the meeting. So I'm gonna share my screen really quickly. Where did my Zoom go?
Okay, let's see if this works now.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start on our FRQ. There are five components to this question, and we're only going to cover 4 of them because we have not covered how to find the total deadweight loss yet, but it is simply just the area of a triangle, right? So I'm going to do the first question. Yeah. So the graph below shows the market for widgets. The government is considering intervening in this market. So when the government is intervening, we can either say it's a price floor, a price ceiling, or a quota. Price floor and price ceiling deal with price, quota deals with quantity. Really simple to understand, price and price, quota is quantity. So calculate the total producer surplus at the market equilibrium price and quantity. So I'm actually not going to do that question as well because we learned specifics of
No,
producer surplus yet?
no.
No, okay,
No,
so I'm gonna skip
no.
that as well. So next question, if the, I'm gonna have to use the annotate feature because this doesn't allow me. So if the government imposes a price floor at $16, so where is 16? 12, 14, 16. This is $16, right? Wait,
Mhm.
that's not a price floor. So this question is completely corrupt. So sorry, that's a weird word choice, but this would basically be a price ceiling actually, right? Because you're setting a maximum, right? So a
Mhm.
price floor at this would actually be ineffective, and we could rewrite it as a in reality it would be a price ceiling because if you set something at that price. So we're gonna go with neither. And
Yeah.
what's my explanation for this? Simply because since a price floor sets a minimum price, it's going to be above the equilibrium price and quantity. And in this situation, it's not. So we can conclude that there's neither a shortage nor a surplus because this price floor is ineffective. Is that the correct answer, guys?
Yeah, that is.
Okay,
And then, yeah.
go
And
ahead.
then C, or wait, I think is it C on the, okay. Yeah, for C, they're saying if instead the government imposes a price ceiling at $12, will there be a shortage, a surplus, or neither? And we should remember that price ceiling on graphs are usually below the equilibrium. And here the equilibrium price is at $20. So we know that this is going to be an effective price ceiling. And we should remember that price ceilings will create a shortage because the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied.
Okay, Shreya, do you want to do D? Or sorry, you can do E, the last one.
Yeah. Okay, so if we're looking at the price increasing from $20 to, or it's a decrease from 20 to 12, and if we look at the price change as well.
Okay, so I think her Wi-Fi glitched out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that one. So assume that the price decreases from $20 to $12. So going back to what Shreya was saying before. So let's just see what that looks like. So we have the price at $20. So this point right here, and then $12, this point right here. And so we know that the question is asking for price elasticity of demand. So I'm just going to completely ignore the price elasticity of supply in this situation because we haven't learned that. And also because that's what the question is pertaining to. So if you scroll down, sorry, let me scroll down. Oh, wait, I can't scroll down. Okay, never mind. Dealing with this. So calculate the price elasticity of demand. So we already discussed how the price elasticity of demand is the percent change in quantity demanded over the percent change in the price. And so what is the percent change in the quantity demanded? So we have 20 here, and then what do we have here? 24. So your difference over original for the top is 4 over 20. That's my change in my percent. That's my change so far, right? Because I changed 4 over my original 20. Then what's my price change? So price decreases from 12 to 20 to 12, and so that would be 8 over 20, right? And so once you discover that's 1 over 5, and then what is 8 over 20?
It's 0.4.
Right, so then you would figure out that, wait, one second, let me make sure I'm doing this right. 8 over 20 equals, divided by 4, both sides is 5, 2 over 5. So 5 over 2. So if you do that, your 5s cancel out, right? And you simply get 1/2. And so when your demand elasticity is 1/2, what can you conclude about the situation? Remember, we talked about how if the demand is inelastic, when demand is relatively inelastic, the coefficient is going to be greater than 0, but less than 1. And so that fits perfectly. And so that means it's going to be relatively inelastic. So that's all for our meeting today. Thank you, Amrutha, and thank you, Shriya, for joining.